Hello everyone, welcome to another tutorial. In today's tutorial we are going to be implementing Supabase Authentication and we are going to be doing it in Flutter. So what is Supabase? I talked about it in my previous video, so check out the link in the description to see the introductory video that I did on Supabase to have an idea of what Supabase is. In this video, I have created a nice looking template. So we are not going to be doing UI stuff here. It has a username, email, and password to log in. And when you click on this button, it's going to redirect you to the authenticated page, which in our case is the home screen. And then you have a nice little sign up text here that when you click on it, it will give you to sign up. But sign up is beyond the scope of this video. We're going to do it in the next video. But in this video, we're just going to see how we're going to implement this email and password authentication in Supabase. Before we start implementing, I'm going to show you the structure of the project we have currently. So we have a main.dot file, and we have a theme folder which holds all the theming that we have in the app. And then we have a screen folder which holds the auth, the login, the sign up. And then we have the home screen that's got routed to when we're signing. And we have our app router. For this tutorial, we are using GoRouter as our navigation package. So let's see how it works. You put in some email and password and you are going to log in. But for now, if you don't put in anything, you have this warning that you should please enter your email. And for the password, you can put in your password and you can toggle this eye icon. And when you sign in, you have this nice looking dashboard that you are able to see when you're authenticated. And then you have a nice logout button here when you want to log out. Okay, so let's go ahead and start implementing this. So for this tutorial, we are going to be using the Supabase package, and it's called Supabase Flutter. It's the package by Supabase that allows you to integrate Supabase in your Flutter apps. I talked about it in my last video, so to go ahead and do that. And you can see in the configuration here, you need to make sure that you initialize the widget Flutter binding here, which we already did here. And then we need to await Supabase.initialize and the anon key. Okay, so let's go ahead and do what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a new folder in our live folder. I'm going to call it core. So this core, we have a router. I'm going to move our router here inside the core. It's going to refactor that a bit. And then we can have a new file, which I can call Supabase config.dart. So inside here, we put our Supabase configuration. Usually you might need to put it in your environment variables, make it an environment variable, or you get it from pass it as an argument in your build argument. So, but for the purpose of this tutorial, we just make something easy. So we create a Supabase URL, and then we are going to be needing a Supabase anon key. And then we're going to expose a Supabase client here. Now, to be able to have access to this Supabase, make sure that you have it installed in your prospect.yaml file. So you can see we have a Supabase version here. Currently they have it as 2.8.3. So let's use the version. And then let's see if we can upgrade our GoRouter as well. So GoRouter is on 14.6.3. We're going to use that version as well. Good. So we have it installed. Now we need to get the Supabase URL and the anon key. How do we do that? Remember in our last video, I told you to go ahead and sign up on Supabase. When you go to our dashboard, create a new project, and this is the project that we created. And in the project dash, you can copy the project URL and just put it right here. And then you can copy the anon key and then put it right here. So we just need to link up our Supabase with the credentials we have created. So we just import that from our Supabase config and we pass it to await supabase.initialize. In the URL, we pass in the Supabase URL. And here in the anon key, we pass in the Supabase anon key. Okay, so next thing we need to do is let's install some state management solutions for the project. So we are going to be using Riverpod for this tutorial. So we will make use of Flutter Riverpod. So go ahead and search Flutter Riverpod. And we are going to be using 2.6.1. So I'm going to install that from the terminal. And it's going to install Riverpod for us. Now, I want to install the Riverpod annotation as well because we're going to use the build runner. So instead of trying to do everything all over, let's just go to Riverpod documentation and just grab it from there. So we're gonna toggle this code generation and then we grab all this stuff and we just paste it in a terminal and we hit enter. So it's going to install all the necessary things that we need. So you see it's installing Riverpod annotation, Riverpod generator, build runner, and a dev dependency. And you may not need this constant links. So for now, we can get rid of it. But we have Riverpod set up. Okay, so that's part of the setting up now. Now let's go ahead and start creating the providers that we need. So we have core folder here. In the library, let's just create a new folder and call it features. And these features, we create a new folder, we call it auth. So in this auth, we're going to have a new folder called providers. This way we put our auth providers in there. So for the screen, we move it into the auth. So when you open the auth, you see provider screen. And outside the features, we can have a home. So inside the home, we will have another folder called screens. And where's our home screen? This is it. We drag it into the screens on the home folder. So we just make everything nice and easy. So the pattern I'm using here is a feature-based pattern. So you can see by the features, we have the folders based on the feature. And this theming here, we can move it back inside the core so we can have everything nice and set up. So we have app theme in the core. I just have 2 folders. Good. Now, let's go ahead and in this auth provider, let's create a auth provider dot. And in here, we can start implementing a couple of what we need. Let's save all the O file and we're good. So now we're going to create a sealed class here and we call it an auth state. So we want to be able to determine what state the user is, the authentication state of the user. So now we've created a sealed class called authState, and then we can create a class that will tell if the user is authenticated, and it's going to extend our authState here. Also, we want to know if the user that is authenticated. So we can use the user from Supabase. It's going to contain all the details about the user in there. Also, we can have another state that is authenticated state, unauthenticated state. That state is being shown when the user is unauthenticated. And then we can have another state, authState error. And it's going to extend authState. And when there's an error from the Supabase client, we see a message from it. So yeah, so we have 3 authState now: authState authenticated, unauthenticated, and authState error. Now we can go ahead and start creating a provider. And we call it auth. And it's going to extend. So since we are using Riverpod generator, this is how you create a state in Riverpod. You need to annotate, you say class auth extend, you have these symbols in front of it. And then for this particular Riverpod class, we need to keep it alive. So as long as the app is alive, it's not going to be disposed, right? So that's why we need this class, because we need to be able to tell the current auth of the user, or if the user needs to be logged out. So when you do this, you need to override the build method. And in the build method, the type is going to be an auth state, and we need to return some sort of state. So for the start, by default, a user is unauthenticated, right? A user is unauthenticated by default. But here, I'm going to initialize something in the build method. So this will likely check the current state of the user. So now let's implement our initialize state here. And you see what we're going to do there. So in here, we want to get the current session of the user, and we can get that from Supabase. So where do we, for Supabase, remember that we just imported from Supabase config, right? So we have supabase.auth section, and then we can say if the session is null. If the session is null, it's not equals to null, right? If the session is not null, we just set the state of this provider to say that the user is authenticated, and then we say session.user, right? But then we need to check the current state, the current authentication state of the user. So there is a stream from Firebase auth, and it is so if you say supabase.auth on auth state change, and then we're going to listen to that event, and let's put a semicolon here. Okay, so we have the data from the on auth state change, which is a listener, is a stream of auth states. So we emit the latest stream of the user. And then we can do auth change event, and it will be the data.event. And then we want to check the session of the user. So we will do session, and we will get the session of the user. The session is nullable, so we have a nullable session here. And then we can have a nice switch case here. So we will have a switch, and we can add all the switch cases here. So in the case that the auth change event is signing, if the user is signed in, we can then do if the session is not equals to null, then we set the current state to say that the user is authenticated. And then we break out from there. If we say the user is signed out, and then we also break out from there. And then by default, we break. There are other auth change events that you need to know of. You can see all of them here. When you go into the auth change event, you can see the initial session, password recovery, sign in, sign out, token refresh, user updated. But for here, we just need if the user is signed in or sign out. So if the user is signed in, we just navigate the user to the dashboard. If we sign out, we log the user out manually from the app. So now that we have a basic initialize for our auth, to get rid of all the errors here, at the top of our auth provider, we need to put this auth provider.g.dart. Now we can run our build runner, and it will get rid of all those errors. So we can grab our .run build runner watch command, and it's going to generate another file for us outside of the auth provider. Almost done. Okay, so it succeeded, and you can see the auth provider here, just a little small file that really just says it's a notifier provider. Now, another method that we need to write is a method that will sign in the user. So we can say signing. So it's also in this file that you are signing in by other provider, maybe you have Google signing or GitHub signing or whatever signing provider that you have, you just add it as a method to this file. Okay, so here our signing method, we're taking the email and the password, and we can have a nice try catch here, and we have it as a response. So what this does is, from supabase.auth, We can have dot sign in with password is a method in the auth. You can see there is other method in here. You can re-authenticate the user. You can sign in anonymously, sign in with OTP, sign in with password, and some other sign-in functionality that you need. So now we can now start checking and say if the response dot user is not equals to null, we can then set the state to be authenticated here directly. And it needs us to pass in the user. But because it's authenticated, we are sure that this response.user is not going to be null. Now here, in the catch, we don't just catch all the exceptions. We actually can catch the auth exception here. So, and then we can also then finally catch any other errors that we want. But we want to really first catch the auth exemption here. And for now, we just pass in the message. We can actually, in this auth exception, you can say you want to catch the auth API exception if you want. So let me pass in here. You see, you can catch the auth API exception. And if you go into the auth API exception, if you look at the documentation here, you can see a list of error codes that you can check for. So you just pass in that, and oh no, I think their documentation isn't navigating correctly. But let's see if we can Google Supabase of error codes. Should be this one. Let's see if we have. Okay, right. So if you go down a bit, you can see all the auth error codes table. So you'll be able to see the code that you could check for and throw the right error codes if you want. So there's a best practice thingy here. So basically you can just catch any of the errors that you want here. But for now, we keep it simple and just have this. Now, we are done with our auth provider. So let's go ahead and start integrating that into our UI. And we can go to our login screen. So let's go to login screen. And what do we have here? We have a stateful widget, and we have a text field that is an email and a password and a button, which is great for us. So now we can, so here there's a method that to undo login. And it is in here that we will need to add the logic to login. So we can say try catch and then import our auth provider. So we can say await ref.read and pass in our auth provider.notifier and then do .signin. So the sign-in method that we created the other time is here. So we then pass in the controller email controller and the password controller. Right. And we can even do .trim here. So we can trim off the email and the password. So we have try catch. And then we can, I don't think we really need the catch. We can just do try finally. So we not need this one at all. And we can have a little piece of code here that if it is mounted, just do the set state to be false. So here there's still a bit of error. It doesn't know what ref is. And it's because we are using a stateful widget here. So if we convert it to a stateful widget and we import Riverpod and convert this to a consumer state instead of just a state, and here as well, we make it a consumer state. So we have a consumer stateful widget right here. So when we click on handle login, which is linked to our button, it's just going to go to this provider as well. Now, that's just what happens when you click on it, but it still wouldn't go. It just goes to Supabase, maybe authenticate. So we're going to write a couple of logic still. So we can do a ref.listen and then listen to our auth provider. Auth provider, and here we have access to the two states, the previous states and the next state. What we really didn't need is the next state. In this scenario, we don't need this previous state. And then we can say if next. Remember that we are using a sealed class, so we can use a case here, and then we can say if the state is an auth state error, we can then do final message. We can take the message from the auth state error, because remember that the auth state error has a message there. And then we can then show that message in a scaffold messenger. So here we just show it in a scaffold messenger snack bar. And if you want, we can have a nice background. And we take the background from our theme. So we can do theme.of context color scheme.error. Yeah, so our screen is complaining, but we can just stop it here. So literally what we've done here is that we've listened to this auth provider and we are saying that if the current state, which is your next, is auth state error, just take the message from the auth state error and display that in the snack bar. Really simple stuff, easy peasy. So that is basically what we need to do in our login here. But still, we won't log in yet because it needs to route, it needs to navigate. And we shouldn't do that here. All we just need to do is just take some action and then let our provider do the rest. Now, because this app is driven with GoRouter, where our next focus will be is the provider. And here we let the GoRouter, sorry. So here we let the GoRouter handle all the logging, all the navigation and stuff. So let's change a bit of how this GoRouter is done. So we will create a router provider and it will be a provider. We just want to provide a GoRouter. And here we will create like a router, and it will be like a router notifier. And we're passing a ref here. We will write the logic of this router notifier below. So it's going to return a Go router. And in this Go router, for now, we're going to keep things simple. In the refresh listenable, we're passing the router that we get from this router notifier. For this redirect, we will have router.redirect. We will add the redirect logic, as you will see. And then the routes will be the same, router._route. Now let's create a router notifier. And in this case, we're just going to do a router notifier is going to extend change notifier here. And here we just do ref. And we create the constructor for it. And let's make this private ref. So it's going to be this._ref. So when we initialize this router, we are going to then listen to our auth provider. So this auth provider, we really don't need the state at all. So we just ignore the state here. What we want it to do is just to notify listeners. It's just to update this change notifier anytime the auth state has changed. So we just want to use it to really notify this Go router that the auth state has changed. So we want to force it to rebuild. And then we can write the redirect logic, and we just say redirect. So it's going to take in the build context and the Go router states. And we can now say, let's get the auth state from the auth provider. This needs to be in the change notifier. Yeah, that's how we have access to RF. Okay, so we read the auth state, and depending on what the auth state does to us, we can say final is auth, is the user authenticated, and then we can use a nice switch pattern matching here, and then do auth. If it's authenticated, it is true. Anything else is false. So we don't want to care. We just want to get only a state here. If it's authenticated, it is true. Anything else is false. So then we can say it's logging in. We can just check if the user is logging in. We assume if the user is logging in, it will be at the login. So we use the state.matched location and say you are logging in. And then we can write some logic here and say if the user is not auth and the user is not logging in, just return back to the login. And then we have another logic here. If the user is authenticated and the user is logging in, then redirect the user to the home or the base URL. In this case, it will be our home screen. Else, you just return null. So if it's returned null, it will not do anything. So, and then Here we can then declare our routes. Here we can say we have a list of routes base, and we will return GoRoute. We'll return sign up, and then our base routes, which will be like our home, we go to the home screen. And then we can get rid of this one that we wrote. Do you have access to? Okay, so let's make this. Okay, we made it. We can make it a getter here, which we want. Okay, so it's a getter now. So let's get rid of the route key. Now we have our router provider. Now we can go back to our home screen and convert this to a consumer widget, and then we import Riverpod, and then we're passing the widget ref here, and then we read our router. Now for the router config, we just pass in the router. Bingo. Okay, cool. So let's run our app and see if there's some other stuff that we missed. But we are logging in. We are running it. It makes sense to stop the app and run it. So let's stop. I forgot we missed something here. We need to wrap our main app with provider scope because we are using Riverpod. So let's run our app again. Good. Okay, so our app is running now. So let's look at our app. Nice looking app. Let's try to sign in, and I'm going to use my email at gmail.com, and we do 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8, and we sign in, and you see it's giving us invalid credentials, which is correct because it's invalid credentials. So to authenticate the user, you need to create the record of that user, and we don't have the record of that user. So if you click on the authentication tab in your Supabase dashboard, you can see the authentication tab is there. So usually a user will sign up and then they will log in, but we don't have any user. So we manually create a user in this dashboard. But in the next video, we'll talk about hooking up the sign up. So once the user is signed up, it can show up here. So we can add the user, create a new user, and we will do the same credentials we have. And we have 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. And we make sure to click the auto confirm user. If not, it will see the user as not confirmed yet. In our next video, we'll talk about that when we are creating user. Do you want the user to confirm themselves? Okay, so we create the user, and boom, we have it in our database. We have the UID email here. Now let's try to sign in again. Sign in. It didn't give us the error, but I have a feeling it does work. Let's check what's going on. So when we click here, we click on sign in, and you can see that we have a user in our response.user. You can see it authenticated. The email is right here. So it does work. The only problem is it is not navigating to where we want it to. So what could be the problem is what we are going to try to solve now. Okay, so now that we have implemented the login, and we are not redirecting right now. So if we're signing, we are redirecting now. And the simple thing that we did was we are supposed to do /login here instead of that's the normal login. So now when we log in, we are here on the home page. Good thing here on the home page is that you can actually know the user here. So if you go to the where's it? Home. If you extend a consumer widget and you put in a widget ref and you import Riverpod, you can literally say auth equals to ref.watch the auth provider here, and then use pattern matching to fetch the user. See, you have a user here, and then you can display the user if you want. So you can say if the user is null, the whole screen is going to show the user not found. If not, if the user is found, we can have put the user here. So we can put the user email and just display it, which in my case, it's my total email. So you can also fetch some other detail about the user. You have the user object with you. Yeah, when we implement the user profile in our upcoming videos, you will see how we can do that. But yeah, this does show that it works and you can see the user. Now, the next part is we want to handle a logout. So when we click on logout, we want the user to log out, right? So how do we make the user log out? I think it's pretty much easy to do that. We can simply just go to our auth provider and say future void log out. Let's be consistent and say sign out. Okay. And then we can implement the method and say try. And we have the await supabase.auth the sign out. Then we set the state as unauthenticated. And it's basically what we have, and we catch the auth exception and then passing the message here. And in our UI, that's the home screen, in the handle logout method, we just, instead of calling Supabase directly here, we just do await ref.read and then we sign out. So let's get rid of the Supabase Flutter that we imported. Is there an error somewhere? It's showing that there's an error. Let's see. Oh, we need to passing the ref in the handle logout because we are now calling the ref here. So let's try. And we hit and we are out, which is totally awesome. And let's try to log in again. Type me at gmail.com 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. Okay, so the next part is when we refresh, because we are logged in and we have not logged out. When we restart, we are supposed to still be logged in. So when we restart, unfortunately, it's taking us to the home. So this part of the video is where we try to implement that, and we definitely can do that right in our app router here. Now we want to make sure that the user is authenticated when we refresh. So when you log in here at gmail.com and you put in the password 123456788 and you sign in, yeah, it signs in, right? But then when you refresh the app or the user swipes of the app and open again, you want to make sure that they are still authenticated. So how do we fix this? We have to go back to our auth provider, and you can see let's put some breakpoints so you can see the problem here. So when you refresh your app, you can see that it hits the initialize, and after that, when we play that, initialize is done. And if you check the session here, you can see there's an active session. This session is not null. You have all the access token. So it sets the state to the user as an authenticated user, right? And then it does all this thing, and then it sets it back to unauthenticated. So now it's confused. First it's authenticated, now it's not. So now let's adjust this logic a bit. So what we want to do here is we first check the session. The user has a session. Then if it's not equals to null, we initialize and we return the user as authenticated. We want to always initialize because we are checking the on state change, and the user, because the user session can expire at any time, right? And we don't want to manually log the user out. So if the session is not equals to null, we authenticate, but we return the state here. If not, we still initialize, but this time we say it is unauthenticated. So in this, let's put a breakpoint here and then we refresh, and we can see that it's going to return the auth state as authenticated and then not come here. So if we look at our screen, we are back on the home page until we log out before we can get out of here. So this is what we actually want, and this is how it works. You can see that Supabase helps you to manage all the session. It helps you to do that automatically, and you don't have to manually persist the user access token or whatever like that. The Supabase client has the current session of the user. Okay, so this is the end of the video. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, and turn on your notification bell for more videos. In the next video, we're going to implement the sign up, and then we'll log in again and come to the home screen. There's still a lot of Supabase videos I want to do in future, so make sure to support this channel to really help me a lot and get me to 1,000 subscribers. Okay, see you in the next one. Bye.